Hey y'all, welcome back to the life of Pylia. It's Pylia, and today we're gonna start my travel around the world series. I'm sure I'm gonna come up with a better name for it like as we go on, but we're starting it today. We're gonna go to the city of Alexandria. There's like this whole entire sim it's a role play sim. It's called Alexandreia. I know my outfit for it is not necessarily Egyptian or set to the time period that the sim is set in exactly, but I kind of just did the best that I can with what I had in my inventory. So I'm super excited. Let's go ahead and head over and explore the city of ancient Alexandria. Okay, so we're here in the city. It takes us into this area right here, and we see, Alexandria is in Egypt, but it was founded by Alexander the Great. And that happened in, got some notes here. It was founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE. BCE, before anyone goes off on a thing, is before Common Era. It's not before Christ. I know that was a thing when we were younger. It was before Christ, but BC is before the Common Era. So, founded by Alexander the Great, 331 BCE. It had already been kind of like a smaller Egyptian city, and there were other smaller Egyptian towns that were around there as well, and they all kind of ended up growing as the city of Alexandria grew and became like this big metropolitan area, which we'll get to in a minute. It became the seat of the Ptolemic kingdom. So after Alexander the Great conquered the city of Alexandria, I'm not really sure. I didn't find any information, nor did I really look too hard, but we see that we have some Egyptian things here, some sarcophagi and things like that. If you click on this little statue, it gives you this note card that tells you information about these specific things. So I thought that was pretty interesting. This place has tons of historical information about the artifacts that they have replicated here. So that was one thing I really enjoyed about this sim. Not only is it beautiful, and as we go through and explore more, you'll see exactly how pretty it is. They've really done a fantastic job with it. So we have this little note card here. And it talks about, it has a couple different Cleopatras, because the one that we all know was like the last one, but there were some before her. And then it shows us a map here of the layout of this sim. And as you can see, like there's the lighthouse and some of these further out areas. Those were further out like cities. And just as the city grew, as Alexandria grew, they just kind of became a part of Alexandria as a whole. So once, a few months after the foundation that Alexandria was founded, Alexander the Great left, right? He never came back to the city while he was alive. And the guy who took over was this guy named Cleomens. And he continued the expansion of the city. Once Alexander the Great died, one of his generals, Ptolemy, who later became Ptolemy the First of Egypt, is who brought Alexander's body back to Alexandria. There was a big, what's it called? A big tomb or a temple with his body or something in it. But I didn't find, I don't know, maybe I found that there or not. I don't really know. There were some places that I couldn't, that I didn't go to in this trip, but that I found in later trips. So there's definitely a lot to see here. I wasn't sure what this building was, but it's pretty cool. I like all of the hieroglyphics. The one thing that I didn't realize was that this was mostly, since Alexander the Great was Greece, this was mostly like a Greek city, though there were, of course, Egyptians who lived there as well. That was probably like the largest population of people was the Egyptians. And then also here in the sim, you have these two little pillars that you see with the cups on them. And if you click on those, it pops up this little window that tells you about, that you can choose which things you want to know about. And so there's different places or selections that you can learn about, and it'll give you historical information about them. And I think that also is because it's a role play sim and it wants people to be historically accurate as much as they can be. And so to have that information readily available to them is really great for this region's designers. And then Tyrone joins us on this trip. He had gone AFK for something, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to go do this. So we're standing right now. We are standing in front of the library. There is this big statue. I believe this is of Alexander the Great. I could be wrong. I didn't click on it to know for sure. And then I saw this guard, and I was like, oh, I wonder if that's a real person. It's just an NPC. So you don't have to worry about that guy. No one's going to attack you here unless you're playing into the role play. So after the Ptolemaics came into power, that's when Alexandria really started to flourish, and it became like the great trade city that we know it for being, right? That's when, like right here, we're coming into the library. It's thought that the library was destroyed in, oh, what did we have? It's 642. That was during the Arab invasion, which is, I think, kind of like the pinnacle of a lot of different battles that happened in Alexandria. And this is when that one would have burned down. That's just like what the belief is. I couldn't find like a firm date, but anyway, when you're here in this in the library here, if you click on any of these podiums, it's going to bring up that menu, and you can choose one of the options in the menu, and it'll give you a note card with just information about that. Like I said, this place is chock full of information to help you with your role play. The city of Alexandria, as you probably know, was like well known for being a safe place for scholars and for luminary thinkers who maybe just wanted to discuss different ideas about religion or philosophy or science. The guy who just determined like the circumference of the earth, they thought that his stuff was there. And so once this library was burned down, there was like a lot of human knowledge and written down human thought that had been lost, that really kind of hurt humanity, at least in the Mediterranean area and up into Europe for probably a couple hundred years going into the Renaissance. So, because I know that was a big deal during the Renaissance, like that's why people would go and check out Rome and stuff, because they were like, we need to reclaim some of this lost knowledge. So just kind of walking around and checking things out again. I think we're gonna come up on this long walkway here, and there was a special word that I learned that this was called, oh, and I don't see it here. It was like the Coptic Road, but it was like really wide. And when they were designing the city, the generals liked the fact that this, including Alexander the Great, liked the fact that this road was so wide, because and the layout of the city was in the grid that it was, because they felt like it gave them a strategic advantage for military movement within the city, as well, like for offense and defensive purposes, right? But it was just, I wish that I would stop wiggling my camera around. You can see that they have these statues lined. We're looking at this lion woman right here. A lot of these things that we're seeing in the sim are replicas of monuments and statues that they have in Alexandria. You can see examples of them still. And so I was kind of walking around. I think this was going into like a temple area. See some more hieroglyphics here. Oh, maybe that's where the tomb was. See? I was so afraid that I was gonna bump into people like in their role play and interrupt them, because, you know, I really try to be as non-invasive as possible. But you see like how wide this row is here. This road, compared to what you might think how wide a road should be, was not a common thing for roads in cities at this time. So the roads were intentionally wide, going from like the ports and running through the city, the main roads. And then over here on one side we have a marketplace that we're going to look at like the entrance for in just a moment. after Alexander's tomb was built there, it became like a really famous tourist destination. You know how like now when someone dies, you know, people go to Edgar Allan Poe's or Jim Morrison's gravesite. They did this. That's not like a new thing that we just started doing to be weird. So people were doing the same thing, including Julius Caesar came to visit it was one of the places he wanted to visit when he visited Alexandria. The other place, we're going to look at the lighthouse kind of in a second. The lighthouse isn't completely done. I was looking at the Greek the Greek art on the wall there, because there was, again, this was like, there was Egyptians living here, there was a big Jewish community living here, there were the Greek community living here, so it was just kind of like a nice melting pot. I mean, not everyone was wealthy, not everyone was like well off. For everyone, it still had a wide variety of like socioeconomic statuses, right? Here we're coming up on the lighthouse. We tried to walk over to it, but it's not quite done yet, so we ended up having to come back to where we just were at. But the lighthouse was really cool, and it existed until it finally fell during an earthquake in the 14th century. And so just a few hundred years after that, in the 1700s, the city was just like a really small town. There was still ruins of like Alexandria from its heyday, of course, where there still are today as well, but it really had declined from when it was one of the largest metropolitan areas on the planet. But over, you know, from the time that it was around, I mean, we're looking at probably 700 years. Well, let's do the math. 331 BCE to 641. We're looking at 1,000 years of this city where it was like on its way up, and then at its pinnacle was one of probably the most important cities in human civilization. Here I'm looking at these, I think these were pulleys. So they had like, you know, very simple machines. We learned about simple machines in school where they were pulling up the wood planks and moving them over to the ships to be used for building ships. Because remember, this was a city that's on an ocean. Or a sea, not like a big ocean. It's like the Mediterranean Sea. I think this is probably, some of these buildings weren't really labeled that I could see, and so I was guessing. I think this was just like, I don't know, maybe customs, whatever their equivalent to customs is. But I just thought like this place as a whole was like super cool. I love history. To begin with, I think it's just like one big long story, right? And I love stories. And so when I saw this place, initially I found it because I was just kind of looking for a place to chill out and be left alone. I didn't realize, so I'd gone to another sim, but people were bothering me there. So I came here. Instead, I didn't realize it was a role play sim. I didn't bump into anyone then either, but I was like so impressed with it. I decided that I was going to have to come back. So I did. Yeah, and this is a temple that we're walking into here. And so I think this is probably the god Baal that we're gonna see, who was an Egyptian god. If you remember the story of Moses and the tablets and the golden cow, I think it's probably that guy right there. But I thought that was super cool too. And I think that one thing we can learn just by looking at this sim is just all of the different influences. And sure, the Greeks came in and overtook the Egyptians, but we still were able to see the Egyptian influences and the Greek influences we could see popping up in some of the artwork on the wall. I don't really know. I guess I was trying to see. Sorry. Oh, so when Ptolemy I became the king of Egypt, he created a new god, Serapis. But I don't see like what he looked like. So I was actually trying to find something because I'd seen a thing about slavery at the time, and I wanted to see if there was a large, because I know that there started out being a smaller Jewish population and then it grew, but I didn't know if like they were connected. So that's all that was. Yeah, but I really love this place. I don't there are all these coins that you'll see walking around, and when you click on those, it will show you, it'll give you options of different places you can go, so you can check out like these gates that are really cool. Here we're looking at like the residential area, which is where like all of us poor folks would be. This is probably where most people in the city would live, in neighborhoods designed like this. But I thought that it was really nice that these were included in the sim, so that it wasn't just a bunch of, you know, rich folks, you know, doing what rich folks do. Thanks so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I had a really awesome time wandering around and researching some of the stuff about Alexandria, and then looking at the sim and comparing it to see how it all fit together. If you have a sim similar to this that you think that I should go and check out, I totally would love to do it. Like I said, I love history, and I'm very interested in looking at sims like this. So let me know if you're aware of one. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you're inclined to do so, and I'll see you next time.